Everything you've been taught about staying true to yourself is keeping you broke, powerless, and invisible. The most successful people in history all did one thing that would horrify their past selves. They committed the ultimate betrayal. And once you understand what that betrayal is, you'll never see success the same way again. I'm about to show you something that will make you question everything you believe about integrity, loyalty, and what it really takes to win. But first, if you're tired of watching others take what should be yours while you play by rules that don't work, hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to reveal will separate you from 99% of people who will never understand this. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You are your own worst enemy, not in the way self-help gurus tell you. Not because you have limiting beliefs or need more confidence. You're your worst enemy because the version of yourself that you're desperately trying to protect is the exact reason you keep losing. Let me ask you something. When was the last time being a good person got you what you wanted? When did playing fair actually work in your favor? When did staying loyal to your values result in the success you were promised? I'll wait. The silence is your answer. And that silence should terrify you. Because while you've been trying to be the hero of your own story, someone else has been writing the ending. Someone who understood something you refused to see. Niccolo Machiavelli figured this out over 500 years ago. He watched good people get destroyed by those who understood power. He saw virtuous leaders lose to manipulative rivals. He witnessed moral individuals become footnotes in history, while strategic players became legends. And he wrote down the brutal truth that everyone knows but nobody wants to admit. The person you want to be and the person you must become to win are not the same person. One of them has to die. But here's where it gets twisted. The death I'm talking about isn't literal. It's psychological. It's the systematic destruction of every belief, every habit, every identity marker that keeps you comfortable but powerless. It's looking in the mirror and deciding that the person staring back at you isn't good enough to get what you want, and that realization is going to hurt. Most people can't handle this pain. They'd rather stay weak than face the fact that their entire identity was built on losing strategies. They'd rather be right than be successful. They'd rather be liked than be respected. They'd rather be good than be great. But you're still here, which means you might be different. Comment below if you're ready to hear the truth that will change everything. Because what comes next will separate the pretenders from the players. Machiavelli never advocated for cruelty for its own sake. He advocated for results. And the harsh reality is that results often demand sacrifice. Not the sacrifice of your comfort, but the sacrifice of your image of yourself, your pride, your moral clarity, your sentimental attachment to virtues that stopped working the moment you decided you wanted more than mediocrity. Think about the most powerful people you know, CEOs, politicians, influencers, entrepreneurs. Do you think they got there by being the same person they were 5 years ago? Do you think they climbed to the top by refusing to compromise, by staying pure, by never bending their principles? If you believe that, you're living in a fantasy. Every single one of them killed their old self multiple times. They shed identities like snakes shed skin. They evolved, adapted, transformed, not because they were evil, but because they understood something you're just learning now. Power isn't built by being good. It's built by being effective. And effectiveness requires you to do things that your current self finds uncomfortable, immoral, or impossible. It requires you to become someone your past self wouldn't recognize. It requires betrayal of the deepest kind, the betrayal of who you think you are. But here's the paradox that will mess with your head. This isn't about becoming a villain. It's about becoming a player in a game you didn't know you were playing. A game where the rules aren't written in self-help books or taught in schools. A game where appearance matters more than reality, where perception shapes truth, where strategy trumps sincerity every single time. Machiavelli understood that people judge by what they see, not what you feel inside. Your intentions are invisible, your actions are visible. Your internal monologue doesn't matter, your external results do. The world doesn't care about your authentic self. It responds to your effective self. So the question becomes, which self are you going to choose? Let me tell you what self-betrayal really looks like. It's looking at the part of you that needs approval and starving it. It's recognizing that your emotions might be liabilities and learning to turn them off when necessary. It's understanding that your loyalty to a dream version of yourself might be the single greatest barrier between you and everything you want. The old you wants comfort. The new you must want control. The old you wants fairness. The new you must want victory. The old you wants to be understood. The new you must be willing to be misunderstood if that's what winning requires. And that transformation is going to feel like you're betraying everything you stand for. Because you are. You're betraying the version of yourself that was designed for survival, not success. For fitting in, not standing out. For being safe, not being significant. If you're feeling uncomfortable right now, good. That discomfort is your old self sensing danger. It knows what's coming. It knows that once you fully understand what I'm telling you, it won't survive. And it's fighting for its life. But let me ask you something. What has that old self actually accomplished? What victories can it claim? What evidence does it have that its way of thinking and being actually works in the real world? I'm guessing the evidence is pretty thin. Now comment below and tell me, what's one belief about yourself that you know is holding you back? Because acknowledging it is the first step to killing it. Here's what most people don't understand about power. It's not about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. It's about having such complete mastery over your thoughts, emotions, and reactions that you can shape them to fit whatever situation you're in. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said a prince must be like a fox and a lion. Sometimes you need to be cunning. Sometimes you need to be fierce. But you can't be either if you're trapped in one identity, one way of being, one set of responses that worked in the past but won't work in the future. Flexibility is power. Adaptability is strength. Evolution is survival. But evolution requires death, the death of what came before. And most people would rather die than change. They'd rather fail as their authentic selves than succeed as someone new. They'd rather be consistent than be victorious. This is why they lose. This is why they watch from the sidelines while others play the game. This is why they end up as background characters in someone else's story. Let me paint you a picture of what self-betrayal actually looks like in practice. It's the moment you stop caring more about being liked than being respected. It's when you realize that your need for approval is a weakness that others exploit. It's recognizing that your attachment to being seen as a good person is preventing you from doing what needs to be done. It's choosing long-term impact over short-term emotions. It's selecting strategy over sentiment. It's prioritizing effectiveness over authenticity when the two conflict. And they will conflict, often. The version of you that succeeds will do things the current version of you swore you'd never do. Not because you become corrupt, but because you become clear. Clear about what matters. Clear about what works. Clear about what the situation actually requires, rather than what you wish it required. That clarity is terrifying because it destroys illusions. Illusions about fairness. Illusions about karma. Illusions about good things coming to good people. Illusions about the world rewarding virtue and punishing vice. The world doesn't work that way. It never has. And pretending it does is why you're stuck where you are. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you accept this reality, once you stop fighting against the way things actually work, you become incredibly powerful. Because while everyone else is playing a game that doesn't exist, you're playing the game that does. While they're waiting for their goodness to be rewarded, you're taking action. While they're hoping for fairness, you're creating advantages. While they're trying to be authentic, you're being effective. And effectiveness wins. Every time. Subscribe if you want more truth bombs like this, because I'm just getting started. Now, let me tell you about the specific mindset shift that changes everything. It's the moment you realize that you don't owe loyalty to your past self. That version of you was created by circumstances, by other people's expectations, by fear, by a need to fit in and be accepted. But those circumstances have changed. Those expectations don't serve you anymore. That fear is holding you back. That need for acceptance is keeping you small. So why are you still protecting a version of yourself that was never designed for the life you want to live? It's like trying to run a marathon in shoes that don't fit. They might have been perfect when you bought them, but now they're causing blisters, slowing you down, making every step painful. Do you keep wearing them because they're familiar? Or do you get new shoes that actually help you win the race? Your old identity is those old shoes, and it's time for an upgrade. But here's what nobody tells you about this process. It's not just uncomfortable, it's isolating. Because the people who knew the old you won't recognize the new you. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of losing yourself. They'll try to pull you back into the box they created for you. And part of you will want to go back. Part of you will miss the simplicity of being who you were. Part of you will question whether the price of transformation is worth it. That's when you'll need to remember why you started this journey. That's when you'll need to focus on results, not feelings. That's when you'll need to choose power over comfort, influence over innocence, victory over virtue. Because the alternative is staying exactly where you are, watching others take what could have been yours, wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to change. Let me ask you something. 5 years from now, do you want to be having the same conversations, facing the same problems, stuck in the same patterns that aren't working now? Or do you want to be someone your current self can barely imagine? If it's the second option, then you know what you have to do. You have to betray yourself. Not your values, but your limitations. Not your principles, but your past. Not your soul, but your story about who you have to be. The most successful people in history all made this choice. They all reached a point where they had to decide between staying the same and getting different results, or changing everything and getting the results they actually wanted. They chose change. They chose growth. They chose transformation. They chose betrayal of their former selves. And that's why their names are remembered, while the names of those who stayed true to their authentic selves are forgotten. Think about it. When has history ever celebrated someone for being consistently mediocre? When has the world built monuments to people who never changed, never grew, never evolved beyond their original programming? The answer is never. Because greatness requires reinvention. Power demands flexibility. Success needs you to be willing to destroy who you were to become who you need to be. If you're ready to make that choice, comment transform below and let me know. Because the people who are ready for this level of change are rare. And I want to know who's really listening versus who's just consuming content. Now let me show you what this looks like in practice. Let's say you're someone who always tells the truth because you value honesty. Noble, right? But what happens when telling the truth destroys an opportunity, hurts someone unnecessarily, or gives your competition an advantage? The old you would tell the truth anyway because that's who you are. The new you would ask, what outcome am I trying to create? What's the most effective approach? What would someone who actually wins do in this situation? Maybe you tell the truth. Maybe you don't. Maybe you tell part of the truth. Maybe you redirect the conversation. The point is, you're no longer trapped by a rigid identity that makes decisions for you. You're strategic, you're flexible, you're effective. That's not being fake, that's being powerful. Or let's say you're someone who's always been humble because you were taught that arrogance is ugly. But what happens when humility makes you invisible? When being modest costs you opportunities? When your reluctance to promote yourself keeps you in the background while less qualified people get ahead? The old you would stay humble because that's your character. The new you would recognize that false humility is just pride disguised as virtue. You'd learn to promote yourself, to take credit, to be visible, not because you're arrogant, but because you understand that no one else is going to do it for you. This is what Machiavelli meant when he talked about being both loved and feared. It's not about being evil, it's about being complete. It's about having access to all of your capabilities, not just the ones that make others comfortable. Most people only use a fraction of their potential because they've locked themselves into an identity that only allows certain behaviors, certain thoughts, certain ways of being. They've created their own prison and then wondered why they can't escape. But you don't have to live in that prison. You have the key. You've always had the key. The key is betrayal. Betrayal of every limitation you've accepted. Betrayal of every excuse you've made. Betrayal of every story you've told yourself about why you can't have what you want. And once you use that key, once you walk out of that prison, you'll realize something that will change everything. You'll realize that the person you thought you had to be was never real. It was just a collection of habits, fears, and other people's expectations. The real you is the person you become when you strip away everything that doesn't serve your goals. The real you is the person who can adapt, evolve, and transform based on what the situation requires. The real you is powerful, flexible, and effective. But that person has been buried under layers of conditioning, social programming, and limiting beliefs. And the only way to reach that person is to dig through all of that debris, to destroy what's fake so you can discover what's real. That's the ultimate betrayal. Not betraying your true self, but betraying the false self that's been running your life. Subscribe if this is making sense to you, because I'm about to share the exact process for making this transformation. Here's how you actually do this. First, you have to get brutally honest about what's not working. Not what you wish was working, not what should be working, what's actually not working. Your current strategies, your current mindset, your current way of being in the world. Make a list. Write it down. Be specific. What opportunities have you missed because you were too nice? What relationships have you lost because you were too passive? What dreams have you abandoned because you were too scared? That list is your old self's resume, and it's pretty pathetic, isn't it? Now make another list. What would you do differently if you weren't trapped by your current identity? What risks would you take? What conversations would you have? What moves would you make? That second list is your new self's potential, and I bet it looks a lot more exciting than the first list. The gap between those two lists is the price of staying the same. It's what you're giving up by refusing to change. It's the cost of loyalty to a version of yourself that doesn't work. Is that cost worth it? Is protecting your current identity worth sacrificing your future? Is being comfortable worth being powerless? I don't think so. And if you're still watching, neither do you. But here's where most people get stuck. They recognize the need to change, but they try to do it gradually. They try to evolve slowly to maintain some connection to their old self while becoming someone new. That doesn't work. You can't be half pregnant. You can't be partially transformed. You can't keep one foot in your old life while stepping into your new one. Real change requires complete commitment. It requires burning bridges. It requires making it impossible to go back to who you were. That's scary. That's risky. That's why most people never do it. But that's also why it works. Because when retreat isn't an option, you find ways to move forward that you never knew existed. When comfort isn't available, you discover strength you didn't know you had. When your old self is truly dead, your new self is forced to come alive. Comment below if you're ready to make that level of commitment. Because if you are, I want to hear from you. I want to know that someone out there is actually willing to do what it takes instead of just talking about it. Now let me address the elephant in the room. You're probably thinking, this sounds manipulative. This sounds unethical. This sounds like you're telling me to become someone I'm not. And you're right about the last part. I am telling you to become someone you're not, because who you are isn't working. Who you are got you to where you are, which apparently isn't where you want to be. If it was, you wouldn't be watching this video.
As for being manipulative and unethical, let me ask you something. Is it ethical to waste your potential? Is it moral to stay small when you could be significant? Is it right to deprive the world of what you could become because you're too attached to who you've been? Every day you don't change. You're robbing yourself and everyone around you of the value you could create, the problems you could solve, the impact you could have. That's the real crime. Not becoming powerful, but staying powerless when you have the ability to transform. Machiavelli understood that the world is shaped by those who act, not those who hesitate. By those who adapt, not those who resist change. By those who understand reality, not those who cling to illusions. And the reality is this. Nice guys finish last, not because the world is unfair, but because nice guys don't understand the game they're playing. They think it's about being good when it's actually about being effective. They think it's about having the right intentions when it's actually about getting the right results. They lose because they're playing by rules that don't exist while their competition is playing to win. But you don't have to be like them. You can choose to see things clearly. You can choose to be strategic. You can choose to become the kind of person who doesn't just hope for success, but creates it. The question is, are you ready to make that choice? Are you ready to kill your old self so your new self can be born? Are you ready to commit the ultimate betrayal? Because if you are, everything changes. Your mindset changes. Your behavior changes. Your results change. Your entire life changes. But if you're not, if you're too attached to who you've been to become who you need to be, then nothing changes. You stay exactly where you are, hoping that somehow, magically, doing the same things will produce different results. And we both know that's not going to happen. So what's it going to be? Comfort or power? Familiarity or success? Your old self or your future? The choice is yours, but choose quickly, because while you're deciding, someone else is already becoming the person you're afraid to be. Someone else is already taking the opportunities you're too scared to pursue. Someone else is already living the life you're just dreaming about. Time doesn't wait for you to be ready. Success doesn't care about your timeline. Power doesn't pause for your personal growth journey. It rewards those who act, those who adapt, those who are willing to betray themselves for something greater. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because in my next video, I'm going to show you the exact step-by-step process for killing your old identity and building a new one from scratch. It's going to be intense, it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to change your life. But only if you're brave enough to watch it. The question is, are you? Let me know in the comments. And remember, the person you are today and the person you need to become are not the same. One of them has to die. Choose wisely.